Yeah, so what's the issue? I think skill development is the flavor of the season. Ever since the 11th plan talked about skill development and then the Prime Minister emphasized skill development, I think everybody is into skill development these days. There's a lot of NGOs who are working into that. There are corporations who are working in skill development. There are government, non-government, donors. I personally represent a donor community. I work for the US Agency for International Development. And for the US government also, it's a big focus area, development of skills. Now, what I think we need to understand is skill development cannot be addressed alone. I mean, it's not a standalone way that you cannot address it. Skill development has linkages to education on the one way. So the education and the education system determines what kind of skill development interventions you have to make. And on the other side is the livelihood and the job opportunities that exist on the other side. So skill development is actually placed in between education and livelihood, and it kind of links learning to livelihood. So I think we have to look at the whole spectrum if we want to kind of comprehensively address the issues of skill development. Now, let's look at education in the beginning. I mean, first let's look at education. Education, you have a situation in the country today where 50% kids drop out by grade 8, 80% drop out by grade 10, only 10% is going into higher education. So 90% of the kids who are losing, they do not have any skills, they do not have much of knowledge to talk about. So, and this is, I think, the most significant problem. It's a huge number. I mean, the number varies anything between 250 and 400 million. I think the first thing is we don't even have a hang of the number. There are all kinds of statistics going around of what this number can be, who these students are, where have they dropped in, and I think as a country, we have not done a good job of researching on this segment and really breaking it down to see what kind of skills is required. Because again, the kind of skills that's required for these huge 400 million children, it depends on one, their educational status, till how much they have read. Even somebody would have done only till grade 4 or 5. There will be others who have done till 8 or 10. It depends on the social status, whether they're rural, urban, tribal, what kind of traditional skills they are brought up with. It also depends a lot on their aspirations in this kind of a globalized world. I mean, you talk to any youth even in the remote village, there are certain aspirations that they have, and it's very important to kind of address those aspirations. So we actually need a kind of a matrix where you have the social status, the education status, the aspirations, and then accordingly design skill development programs to target those groups. Now, I don't think that's happening. If it is happening, it's a very haphazard way. It's not in a very systematic way. For example, we know that there are a large number of non-government organizations which are working in this kind of skill development initiatives. The government, through its MES scheme, does address this kind of sections of people. But we really don't know how many are being addressed, what is the gap, what is the needs. We really have a lot of research that needs to be done on that area. And I think that's one of the areas which the skill development mission can take note of. Secondly, the 10 to 12% that go into higher education, and I think a lot of our discussion tends to kind of focus on this 10 to 12%, which actually includes the ITIs and the polytechnics who have kind of graduated beyond grade 12. Now, again, there's a major issue here because even what we are finding is even after 3 years of graduation, 60% of the graduates are unemployed. So they really do not have the kind of skills that the industry is demanding. Skills of working in teams, skills of communicating, skills of interpersonal skills, managerial skills. Our higher education system is grossly failing to provide those skills to the students. And when I talk higher education, it's the normal BA, MA, BA courses, as well as the engineering courses, as well as the ITIs and polytechnics. So there's a different level of skills that's required at the higher education level, which is more of soft skills, interpersonal skills, but nonetheless, those are lacking. So there's this huge gap of skills, one at the job skills level as well as what I would like to call the employability skills level. So I think this is the challenge. This is the kind of extent of the challenge, and I guess a lot more work needs probably to happen at the national level, at the government level, as well as the industry level. Now, where does the industry come in on all this? I think Typically what has happened in India is industry has come in as funder of programs, so they kind of fund programs of skill development of X number of students getting skill developed and stuff like that. I think the role should go beyond that. I mean, it has to be a much more comprehensive role where the industry gets into all aspects of skill development. So whether you are doing a market scan, whether we're doing a mapping of skills, whether you are deciding on the kind of skills that is required and the curriculum for the training, the kind of and also involvement during the course of the training, probably some kind of internship or things like that. So there are a whole lot of areas where the industry comes in, but what I basically wanted to raise is this challenge of the skill development sector in general, and how we have to look at it much more in a much more integrated way to really resolve this challenge. And we need to actually move into a situation where at the end of grade 10 or 12 we have a very strong career counseling program in the school level, which basically guides the child to say whether, well, I don't like to go into a professional course, I would like to go into vocational trade. And then bringing the vocational education at par with the normal education to allow lateral entry. So it's a very complicated system. You really have to tackle education, you really have to tackle livelihood, and at the same time you have to focus on skill development and skills training. So I think that's a broad overview of this sector and overview of where we are situated. So I think that that is pretty much what I wanted to raise at this forum. The need for research, more research, the need for understanding who these kids are, who needs the skill development, very detailed skill mapping, the larger role of the industry, which is much more holistic, which is not limited only to funding. There are a large opportunity, I guess, to bring in international experience and expertise, which can be in the form of technology, which can be in the form of any other experiences that the world has in this sector. And lastly, and I think a very important critical thing is the whole thing of assessments. I mean, even if we look at the skill development that is happening, skill training that's happening, I see very little documentation of actually what are the skills that's imparted, what's the value add that has happened through a training program, what are the placement percentages. So there's very little data, very little information on all this. I think these are areas which broadly need to be addressed in the whole skill development domain. So these are a few thoughts I thought I'll share at the end of